In the golden age of piracy in the early 1700s, the Caribbean islands were the center of adventure and lawlessness. These small, remote islands provided the perfect retreat for pirates and outlaws on the run from the crown. Even the most famous pirate of all time, Edward Thatch, better known as Blackbeard, is said to have hidden out on the Caribbean islands and set up a base. More precisely, he is said to have settled on the islands that we know today as the British Virgin Islands. This archipelago consists of around 60 islands, has an area of approximately 150 square kilometers, and is home to almost 32,000 people. But why does this archipelago still belong to the United Kingdom after centuries? How did the archipelago come into British hands in the first place? And what is the dark history of this island? We will answer these exciting questions in this video. Have fun! The island was colonized by the Arawak Indians, an indigenous people from the north coast of South America from the 1st century BC. They lived peacefully on the island until the 15th century, but were then subjugated by the Caribs. At the same time, Christopher Columbus also discovered the islands for the Europeans. The name of the islands also goes back to him. He christened the newly discovered archipelago St. Ursula and the 11,000 virgins, who, according to legend, made the pilgrimage to Rome with a group of 11,000 virgins. Tortola, now the main island, was first colonized by Dutch pirates in 1648, who occupied the island until a group of English planters took over in 1666. In 1672, the territory was annexed by England and incorporated into the colony of the Leeward Islands. As in most Caribbean countries at the time, slavery played an important role in the history of the British Virgin Islands. This was mainly due to the fact that slaves were used as forced labor on the island's sugarcane plantations. The export of sugar flourished during this time and became an important source of income. At the beginning of the 18th century, there were repeated slave revolts. Probably the most significant slave revolt occurred in 1831 when a plot was uncovered to kill all the white men in the territory and flee to Haiti by ship with all the white women. This caused panic and led to military assistance being requested from St. Thomas. A number of people suspected of being involved were executed. In 1834, slavery was abolished in the British Empire. However, the former slaves now mostly worked for the same masters, but only received a small wage from which they had to cover the costs previously borne by their masters. The end of slavery, the sugar beet, and the oversupply of sugar on the market caused the sugar economy to falter. The islands lost economic value for Britain, but their strategic location remained attractive. In the following century, the territory was economically very weak and the country's social services deteriorated to the point of insignificance. Emigration was high, especially to St. Thomas and the Dominican Republic. Due to the wars in Europe, Great Britain was reluctant to provide aid. In 1950, the island regained a parliament, which was partly elected and partly appointed. The Leeward Islands were separated in 1956, and the office of governor was abolished in 1960. From then on, the islands were directly a crown colony under British rule. From the 1960s onwards, the tide began to turn. The islands were increasingly discovered by tourists and attracted investors due to their climate, beauty, and above all, their favourable tax policy. Thanks to low tax rates and simple regulations, the British Virgin Islands developed into an international financial centre. This turned the once poor territory into a tax haven that brought jobs to the population and stability to the country. In the early 1990s, illegal drugs became a major problem as drug trafficking and consumption increased in the British Virgin Islands, and the diversion of drug money through the island's financial sector increased. In 2002, the British Overseas Territories Act transformed the British Virgin Islands from a colony to an overseas territory, and the island's inhabitants were granted British citizenship. In recent years, the British Virgin Islands have repeatedly been associated with tax evasion and money laundering. Its reputation as a tax haven attracts investors, but also attracts international criticism. Major organizations such as the EU and the OECD have been pushing for stricter regulations for years. Why have the islands never sought independence despite this? The British Virgin Islands enjoy many advantages as an overseas territory. Britain offers protection and helps with international problems, whether economic or political. Most citizens are happy with this status, as the connection to Great Britain gives them security. That's all for today. Right next to the British Virgin Islands are the US Virgin Islands, which belonged to Denmark until 1917. If you want to find out more about these islands, I can recommend my video about them. Have fun watching it and see you next time. Ciao!